Good evening. Today is the 16th of February, 2026. And for all those that celebrated the holiday this past weekend, some people call it a holiday. I just call it another day, Valentine's Day. Happy belated Valentine's Day to everyone. Have a great show for this evening. Dr. Samino Scott. I met him through a mutual friend. We both will be working on an initiative in Pontiac regarding education. Then my guy, Grant Long from EMU, Glory Days, Eagles, well, Hurons for us.
Huron.
And just want to have a conversation. I know Grant, so I will let him do his introduction. But with regards to you, Dr. Scott, just want to introduce you to the audience because a lot of people know who Grant Long is from his days at EMU, his days in the NBA, and then the stuff that he does now with regard to being a motivational speaker. So let me introduce you. You are a consultant, and very inspirational to the youth. And like I've been promoting this show, the one thing I talk about, I like your tagline, from detention to doctorate. And that's one of the things I would definitely like for you to talk about, because you now are working at a place where you were held in detention. So the irony of that is just amazing. And same with, Grant Long being a motivational speaker, he is in the jails and, pretty much trying to, get people to understand that where they are at does not define their circumstances for the rest of their lives. So that's one of the things about when you're doing motivational speaking, inspirational speaking to a certain audience, you have to first get them to trust you, but most importantly, get them to understand that their circumstances does not define them for the rest of their lives. Because you can correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, but I know you speak at jails, county jails. I'm not sure what aspect you speak at prisons, be it state prisons or federal prisons. You can speak on that if you would like, but just being around individuals that, people make mistakes. Some people make 2 and 3 mistakes, but at the end of the day, if it takes someone to come in and speak to them, to give them a motivational word, to change their trajectory, that's what you are there. That's the purpose that God placed upon you to do. And that's what you're doing. And the same with you, Dr. Scott. You have been in the shoes of where a lot of the young adults, and I'd rather call them young adults, they're juveniles. And, you can speak from experience. You could tell them that, yes, I've been here, but it did not set my trajectory with regards to where I am at now. Having procured a doctorate degree in education, that in and of itself is amazing. And as I told both of you prior to inviting you on, when we had our conversations over the weekend yesterday, that, during the course of the podcast, I will be mentioning people that are joining us, and you will be able to see the comments and or questions if they want to direct a question directly to you. We could take time out for you to answer. But let me welcome to the show a couple of people that joined us already, and both of them are regulars. And good evening to both Desmore and who's joining us, and you will see their names as well. So with that being said, I gave a brief introduction of Dr. Scott. You could go ahead and give some words to the audience, Grant, with regards to who you are. I know you, the audience do not. So get an audience who you are, what you've done, and what you're doing now. So Karen Winston, welcome to the show. Karen Winston is a regular. Les Moore, welcome to the show. And there's one more so far I want to welcome to the show. And that would be Tamara Kimmich, a regular to the show. So go ahead, Grant.
Well, I'll just start by saying thanks for having me on, Eric. It's going to be an honor to discuss or have a discussion tonight. I think it's a roaring topic that needs to be not just skimmed over it. It's a conversation that needs to be had because there are so many young individuals and even older individuals who are in a situation that they need. I wouldn't necessarily call it forgiveness, but redemption, an opportunity for redemption. And
right.
This is where we are. So to bring you up to speed, I'm from Romulus, Michigan, not far from Ypsilanti, where I went to school at EMU. And even back then, guys, there was a campaign out at that time that was called That's when the crack epidemic was really running rampant. And I felt that there was something that we could do, something that needed to be done. And although it really did devastate a lot of communities, particularly the Black community, the crack cocaine era, it just felt like we missed it or we dropped the ball during that time. We did come up later on and tried to do some things about it, but for the most part, it had already did its damage. And now, even now, there's some collateral damage from that era that's going on right now. So I think we dropped the ball on it. So here's an opportunity for guys like us, people like us, not just here, but everywhere, to try to do something about it, catch it before it gets out of hand, and let people know that there's a second chance opportunity if they want it, if they want that opportunity. So I got involved in speaking because, and let me say this also, I speak to men. I have never had a group of women that I speak to. I only speak to men. And I say that because I know nothing about being a woman. I've been a man. I've been a man my whole life. I know nothing about the struggles that women go through. I don't know the day-to-day basis, things that they have to deal with. I have no idea. I am a man through and through. I have no idea what Caitlyn Jenner or Bruce Jenner is doing. That doesn't apply to me. I am a man, period. So I understand what we all go through. And that's why I've made it my pact to speak to men, because I have an understanding, no matter what level you've achieved or where you've come from or what you're doing, we all face the same type of problems. There's depression that we go through. There's just man problems that we all go through. And that's what drew me to wanting to speak to men, no matter where they are in their walk of life. We all have some things in common. And a lot of it is our choices that we make, the decisions that we have, that we're faced with. Sometimes we make the right one, sometimes we don't make the right one. But at the end of the day, I'm here to say the same thing that troubles you troubles me. You might be incarcerated right now on some things that, quite frankly, I may have done in my early youth. I just didn't get caught. You got caught. Right. So there's a lot of things, the minor things that might separate me from being where these people are. And I understand that. I understand that. But for the grace of God, that it didn't happen to me, or I didn't get caught in that moment of making reckless decisions and doing things out of character for myself. So I understand that. And that's where my understanding comes from, because it's, again, I know how easily as men we can fall prey to a lot of the things that have been trapping men, if you will, from the early ages, from day one. I mean, the same things that trapped people biblically are still going on trapping men today, because we just sometimes we can't get out of our own way.
Right. And I appreciate what you're saying, Grant, because, we were at Eastern Michigan together. We had actually the time we were there, we only had one class together, economics with Dr. Crary, which was interesting because it was yourself and a few other athletes in the class. And you brought up the crack epidemic. I mean, you had a conversation last night that we'll get into a little bit further through the interview, but that was a devastating part of why education is messed up today, in my opinion, because as I said yesterday, those crack users are now parents of crack kids.
Yep.
And they, that's when the educational crisis, in my opinion, when it first went downhill. So now you have kids that are the product of those individuals in the classrooms that were not getting educated. And I always use, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you before, Dr. Scott, but I always use the analogy when I give speeches, and I draw the parallel of Dr. King's, boot comment. You cannot ask a bootless man to lift himself up by his bootstraps. Under the same token, you cannot ask an uneducated parent to assist in educating their child. Yes, it starts at home, but there are limitations. We have to be honest with that. There are limitations with a lot of these parents with regards to trying to assist their children in getting an education. So when people say it starts at home, I say, yes, it does, but there's a caveat to that. And that's the analogy I make when I give speeches. That caveat is real because 30 years ago is when the kids of the crack epidemic start being educated. And as they got older, they had a failed educational system, and the crisis is real. And that's another thing we need to focus on. So with that being said, I gave you a brief introduction, Dr. Scott. I am interested, just as Grant is interested. Let me introduce you to Grant Long, Dr. Scott, Grant Long. Your tagline is one of the most amazing taglines that I have so much appreciation for. You know, I've known Grant Long for 40 years now. Much respect for him, being in the classroom with him, seeing his journey through college being a success, NBA being a success, now being a success after his NBA career. Your tagline, from detention to doctorate, is just amazing. Give the audience a little bit of feedback on what that actually is about.
Yeah, well, you know, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, Grant, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, Eric. I'm really appreciate this moment. And Grant, you kind of highlighted some of the things that, you know, I would share in talking about the 80s and the height of the drug epidemic. And that was really my story as well. You know, myself and guys in our neighborhood, we really grew up playing football, basketball, all types of sports in the neighborhood. And it seemed like almost overnight, crack just really proliferated our area and no one was playing sports. And all the guys who were once competing against each other athletically started competing against each other in the street, selling drugs. And so it was really a difficult time in I think Black communities all over the country. And so for me, it was really, it was more important than school at that time. I would really go to school just to sell drugs. And in fact, that's where I was arrested, at school. So a security officer from the school followed me after making a drug transaction and arrested me right down maybe a quarter mile from our high school at Pontiac Northern. And at that time, they sent me directly to the Oakland County Children's Village. And for the first time in my life, I really started thinking about my future. Prior to that, it was just, I was living for the day. And so the opportunity to go back now as the Chief of Project Management and Initiatives at Children's Village is really something that it's a heartfelt opportunity to impact the lives of young men that really look like me. So when I see them, I see myself.
You see yourself,
and,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my first professional experience out of college was working as a college admissions advisor at Oakland University. And similarly, I would go to high schools throughout Detroit, Southfield, Oak Park, Pontiac, and I would see young men and also women, but mainly the young men who thought about college, but hadn't done anything to prepare
for college.
And so for me, although I worked for Oakland University, it was really about making sure that they believed they could go somewhere. And so that became really the first opportunity for me to pour into young men in a way that I felt I was making a difference. And so I've been in this role now for about a year, and my focus is bringing in initiatives to help improve their educational outcomes, their workforce readiness outcomes, connect them to credible messengers or mentors who have gone through a similar experience, who also understand what they're going through. And so I often describe this work as the life-changing business, because we know if these young people don't get it as a teenager, the next step is across the street for us at Oakland County Jail. And for many young men, what I've seen in my first year, we've lost a few lives as well of young men who left but didn't quite get the message and went home to, quite frankly, what is the most difficult challenge, which is leaving juvenile detention, going back to your same neighborhood, around your same friends, around the same environment that led you to juvenile detention in the first place. And so, just enjoying the opportunity to pour into young people. And like Grant said, we dropped the ball in the 80s. And so for me, it's an opportunity to pay it forward.
I got
and just hold on one second, Grant. As you see comments, I can't get to any of them. If you see comments directed to yourself, you can acknowledge it yourself, Grant and Dr. Scott. And even though I know you personally, Dr. Scott, I respect people that earn the titles that they have earned. So I will call you Dr. Scott throughout the interview, just out of respect. And again, if you see any comments, you can respond to them. And as I ask all viewers to do when they're watching the show, like, subscribe, share, because this is a very important conversation. So if you have the opportunity to share, if you're looking at it on a computer or your phone, please do so, because both Grant and Dr. Scott took time out of their schedule to have this important conversation. So sorry about that, Grant. You can go ahead. I know you're about to ask that.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Dr. Scott, because he kind of walked into it a little bit. He leaned into it a little bit, I should say. But how did you arrive at this point? How did you navigate? Because I'm sure it was, because I know people personally that are still dealing with it after being released 4 or 5 years ago. They're still dealing with it. How were you able to navigate the stigma of being who you were as to who you are now? Because coming straight out with that stigma, those doors are not going to open. How were you able to navigate that? What pushed it to the point where now that stigma is behind you?
Yeah, so I think the big thing, Grant, was just a fear of going to prison. I almost felt like it was bound to happen. And so since that time, I've had my best friend. He was shot in the back of the head 30 years ago. Had multiple friends do decades in prison. And so, I'm convinced what saved me, quite frankly, was the opportunity to get away from home and go to Alabama State. I spent 3 years at Alabama State prior to having to come back and transfer. But at that point, I had hope that this college thing, I was a first generation college student. I didn't know if it would work out or not. I just prayed that it would give me an opportunity to do something other than sell drugs and, really try to save my life as a result of that.
Okay, let me try to hone in on that. I get what you just said, but the stigma that other people attach to you. I understand you were working and doing your thing, but how did you make the other people that might be in a position to say, okay, we're going to take Dr. Scott and we're going to give him an opportunity? How were you able to navigate that? Because when people open that door and they look at that paper and they understand where you came from, a lot of people just close it back up and say, yeah, we don't have anything for you.
Yeah, well, I actually flipped it, because at some point my friends started telling me, and my friends call me Mino, by the way. So Mino, Samino, Dr. Scott is fine, whatever works. But they kept telling me you had to tell your story, because I was just committed to just doing the work. And finally, I started sharing my story and more people started learning about it. And I got a call from an administrator at Children's Village. I had been featured in a magazine where I told my story. They learned about it. And so I went for the first time, and just my first time back after 30 years, I had a chance to speak to all of the residents. It was about 50 to 60 residents. And from that moment forward, I just started connecting with Children's Village in any way that I could. I was running a nonprofit, so I brought in 10 other justice involved individuals, and we did a career fair. These were folks who had made a difference in their life, came back and wanted to pour into young people, because quite frankly, I think we all realized that we dropped the ball and wanted to do something to help the next generation.
And speaking of dropping the ball, Tamari Kimmich, she made a great point about how crack was installed by the American government, Oliver North, Ronald Reagan, and we demand reparations. And that's ties in with what G. Hardy, who's also an alumnus of Eastern Michigan University, Galen Hardy, the crack epidemic set the Black family back. Anyone like to speak on that comment?
Well, it's like I said earlier, there's still collateral damage going on even now today, based on that. And now, since we've been able to come out of it, and the information that came forth afterwards, just like G just said, who was involved in all of this? That's to me where, again, something needed to be done. There was something that needed to be said. Once the information came forth that Oliver North, and you saw Oliver North got, whatever you want to call it, vindicated or whitewashed or whatever, everything that he did just went away. When everybody at the top of this thing, they were involved and they were able to skate away free, and left the collateral damage for the Black communities to deal with. And that, to me, that's where the injustice is. And I don't know what we can do about it, but I can tell you that that injustice is palatable. And we have the factual truth that tells us that these people were involved and it was done intentionally, all of that. But yet there's been nothing done about it. And I'm not the person to say what can be done. I have no idea.
Right. And one welcome also Kenneth Powell. He's a regular to the all of the Detroit and Black and White broadcasts. Mr. 1213, thanks for joining me this evening. Very important conversation with my man Grant Long, fellow EMU alum, as well as former NBA player, and then also Dr. Semino Scott, who has a tagline of "From Detention to Doctorate." When you go into the prisons, jails, Grant, what is your primary goal once you walk through those doors, seeing those residents of the concrete motels and hotels and leaving out? What is your goal going in, and what's your feeling once you're walking away from having a conversation with them?
Well, I tell the men, listen, I'm here to be edified. I want you guys to give me something that I can take away that helps me, that builds me up as well. Because like I said, my post is that I'm speaking to men. I'm gathering information. Information is power, so powerful. So give me something, guys. Don't just sit back and take everything from me and absorb everything from me. Give me something. What did you do to get here? How could you have changed or saw things differently? How is your perspective different than it is now, or now than it was before? All of these things I like to know. I like to have guys have that conversation, because in talking about it, it makes it real. When you talk about it and own up to it, it makes it very real. And I like that fact that the guys are accountable. I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, there was a young man in there who was a runner-up of Mr. Basketball in 2017.
Oh, wow.
An amazing story. I knew the guy that he was second runner-up. I knew the guy who actually won it that year. And we were having a conversation, and he just got sidetracked. He just made a few bad decisions, but it was a tremendous athlete, a very good student. But one of those things where he just started running with the wrong crowd and then trying to impress that group that he was with. And he was the one that ended up getting in trouble. So we had that conversation. And for him to actually tell it and say, you know what, that was just, a bad decision on my part. I'm better for it. I'm better now than I'll ever be. And as I told them, when you're in here, don't celebrate the day that you leave. The celebration comes when you decide that you're going to change. That's when you celebrate. Think about this. Any business, you don't celebrate the success of your business. And why is that? Because when you start a business, you're expecting it to do well.
Right.
So the success, it shouldn't be celebrated. To me, the choice to do something and commit to it, that's the celebration, because most people don't get off the couch and do anything. They sit back and they talk, but no action. Barry Sanders, I use this as an example. I used it the other day. Barry Sanders, through all of his greatness, when he scored a touchdown, his celebration was flip the ball to the referee and go back and get ready to play again. Barry Sanders played a lot of football, practiced very hard. It was his expectation to get into the end zone. Why am I celebrating that? That's what I'm supposed to do. I knew I would be here. I'm not celebrating that. Here, ref, take the ball, and I'm getting ready to go do it again. That's what he was built to do. So that's why I tell these guys, celebrate the fact that you have made a commitment that your life is going to change today. That's the celebration. Now commit to that decision. Commit to it. And when you walk out of this door, walk out proud, like, you know what, I set out to do this, and this is the day that I'm walking out. I'm gone. I'm not coming back.
And Dr. Scott, there's a comment from Tamari. Put the Black man in prison and he won't be out here making babies and having families. Population control by white supremacy. The ISIS paper, Dr. Francis Cress Westling. Keys to the colors. You care to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't lose sight of the system. I mean, we kind of touched on it a bit earlier with, COINTELPRO and other policies that have been put forth, the omnibus crime bill, and so many things that have led to our incarceration. And, Grant said something really interesting early, which was, how did you avoid going to prison? It's not being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that should not be the reality for Black men, to avoid going to prison because of all of the things that are available in our community that would lead to incarceration. And so while at the Children's Village, we make sure, and I should point this out as well, 66% of our residents come to us with some type of mental health diagnosis. So dealing with mental health is something that we really got to get our arms around. And in addition to that, our communities have to do a better job of providing these services that our residents need. They need mentors. They need mental health support. They need clinical support, counseling, wraparound support for our parents. All of these things lead to young men and women being put in the pipeline to prison, starting in juvenile detention, leading to ultimately to prison. And so I think it's the community's responsibility, because as history has taught us, on a federal level, they're not going to prevent the outcomes that so many Black men encounter throughout their lives.
And Les Moore has a great comment. Y'all doing the most important job that can be done. That's one of the reasons I had both of you on the show, because you two are doing an amazing job. And with that being said, you're at the detention level of juveniles, Dr. Scott. How does it make you feel when, to Grant's point earlier, your success is leaving, making a commitment not to come back? And I can only assume, since you've been there, you've seen some guys come back. And it's at the juvenile level. How does that make you feel?
I've seen guys come back. I've seen guys go home and within 90 to 100 days end up dead. And so, you know, it's just a critical moment in a young Black man's life. The challenge is, how do you say no to your peers when you get that call or they come to visit and ask you to get in the car or talk to you about that opportunity that's available? How do you say no? And many of us at that stage in our life just don't have the ability to do it, don't have the resources to go outside of our community for pro-social activities, for employment, for mentoring. We've got to do better, because no one is coming to save us. And if we don't do it, we'll continue to see this pattern.
I'm big on empowering yourself as an individual too. I'm glad you said that, Dr. Stewart, because Dr. Scott, rather, you said when we get in with the wrong crowd, and we've all heard that mantra, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. We've all heard that. One of the things that I told the guys the other day, and I tell this to most of the young kids that I speak to, and I give them this example. I say, when your friends call you and the first thing they say, yo, what's up? And what do you say? What's your response? Typically the response is nothing. They say, I ain't doing nothing, I'm chilling. I'm doing nothing. Anything is better than nothing. Absolutely. When you say nothing, you open the door for whoever just called you to give you something to do.
Something to do, right?
So whatever you're doing, when somebody calls you or texts you and say, hey, what's up? What you doing? You're doing something. I don't care if you're washing dishes, you're washing the car, I'm getting ready to mow the lawn, I'm getting ready to shovel some snow, I'm getting ready to do something. So now you have the control right back. So whatever they offer you to do, now I'm already doing something. I can't do that. I can't go with you because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So I tell them, never say you're doing nothing, because somebody will give you something to do if you're doing nothing. And now if you're not strong enough, you can't back out of it, because the next thing that person is going to say is, but you said you wasn't doing anything. So now come on, go with me. Now right, you can't backtrack and say, I'm getting ready to do something. Now, you already told me you weren't doing anything. So you're always doing something when they call. Now it's up to you to hang on to that decision that you just made. Don't let nobody talk you out of that, whatever it is that you were doing. But you are always doing something.
And that's a good segue to the comment. And I've read the book Conspiracy to Destroy the Black Boys, and I've also seen Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu in person a couple of times. That book speaks to similarly what you just said, Grant, as well as Dr. Scott, what you said. You know, the conspiracy is real, but under the same token, we as individuals have to make the decisions not to make the conspiracy a reality. You know, not proving the other race, the majority race, not proving them right. And that's one of the downfalls we have, because we have to do something with regard to self-control. Yeah. And I like that statement, that analogy you just made, Grant, because saying you're doing nothing, you're opening yourself up for someone to say, come roll with me then, if you're doing nothing.
Yep.
So that's a great point. And were you about to say something, Dr. Scott? So you're nodding your head.
Well, I was just going to add to that. Not only what are you doing individually, but what are we doing as Black men and as a Black.
That's a whole nother conversation, Dr. Scott. Real one, you know.
When I've talked about our illiteracy rates, right? Those are just some fundamental things that, considering what our ancestors died for and fought for, should be unthinkable in our community. Things that we can control, but we aren't. And so I think we just have to really think through that a bit more. We got to do a better job in that area.
And that speaks to something I'm very well, you know, the passion I have for that. I shared my story with you, Dr. Scott, maybe about a month and a half ago. You know, people always ask me, as you did as well, how did I get so involved in literacy? On March 5th, 2017, at work, you know, how they pass around the magazine, the business magazine. So Crane's business magazine was passed around to the leadership within the department. You know, I'm in the HR department. I'm reading an article about a 12th grader at Detroit Central High School. Remember, I said 12th grader.
Okay.
At Detroit Central High School, reading at a first, second grade level. So I said to myself, how in the hell is that possible? So I started doing research. Not only was it possible, it was kind of like the norm in a lot of these urban school districts. 3 months later, I think it was June 10th, an article from Higher Ed, Chronicle of Higher Ed, came out speaking to the fact that 75% of Black K through 12 boys were not reading at grade level. So I said to myself, first of all, kindergarten is not even a damn grade. First and foremost.
Very true.
Well, the most disappointing thing about that was 5 years later in 2022, 75% of Black boys K through 12 in California were not reading at grade level. So where did we drop the ball as a village, as a community, as Black people? Because at the end of the day, all this BMW mentality, bitching, moaning, and whining about politics, you can't fix that. That is what it is. But what you can fix is what's going on in your community that's negative. You look at the 17 socioeconomic factors in almost any urban community, and we define urban as being predominantly Black. Even though Chicago is not predominantly Black, it's still considered an urban community. Every last one of those 17 socioeconomic factors has us at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to those quality of life issues. You know, I'm a member of Kappa Psi. I wrote the charter petition for a new chapter in Macomb County. Macomb County has 23 cities. One of my standards to make the case for why a Black male organization needs to be in that community, I looked at all 23 of those cities in Macomb County. In every last one of those communities, even though some of the communities only had 1-2% of a Black population, we were at the bottom of the totem pole when it came to educational outcomes. Why is that? But we spend so much time focusing on whining about the president, whining about the governor, whining about your local officials. Fix what you can fix. To your point, Dr. Scott, we need to fix what we can fix and focus on that. And people be like, well, you focus on Black. What color am I? I'm not supposed to focus on white, Indian, I'm Black. So my focus on it is on improving the ills and the deficiencies in the Black community. I mean, when I've won awards, I don't win awards based on, Eric's just a great guy. Every award I've won, twice Brother of the Year for my fraternity in the region, Eastern Michigan Alumni Achievement Award. On the 28th of this month, I get an award for community service. All of it has been predicated on me giving back to the community. I don't even live in Detroit. I don't live in Ypsilanti. But the places where I serve, Pontiac, I don't live in Pontiac, are all urban communities that need our help. I'm on the board, vice president of a board for a charter school in Inkster. The Inkster School District was dissolved a few years ago. Yep. So we have to do what we need to get done to focus on our community. And yes, it's always going to be me doing the bitching, moaning, and whining about fixing our community. And if you don't like the hard talk that I come with, I mean, there's a reason my show is called Reality Strikes. I mean, my previous show when I was on internet radio was called Reality Strikes, because I am about telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. I don't have time for the pacification of individuals to make them feel good. No, I'm my favorite line, just like you have your tagline, Dr. Scott. My favorite line from A Few Good Men is when Jack Nicholson says, "You cannot handle the truth," and that's our problem in our community, in our village. We cannot handle the truth.
I think you're on to something. You're right. There's a huge picture out there, but going back to that, handle what we can handle, fix what we can fix. It really does start at a very small level when we start to change the narrative of what the world thinks about who we are.
Correct.
We have to change that narrative, because we do have control of our own narrative and telling our own story and guiding our young people in this direction. But that's a conversation. But at the same time, when you say or try to guide young people or say it's going to be a certain way, it's so vitally important that we change what we consider as priority. When we have young people, and this is one of the things that I tell when I speak to younger kids, and when I say younger kids, I mean grade school down. Don't let any mother, auntie, or grandmother, and I tell this to the young men, call you the man of the house. That's a mistake that we make in our community. That's my little man. He's the man of this house. No, he's not. That little man is not paying any bills. He does not assume any responsibility. And here's what I do know, because like I told you when I first came on, I'm a man. I've been a man my entire life after I was a boy, obviously. And when you tell a man or tell a young boy that he is the man of the house, even though he has no means to be that, mom has said it, auntie has said it, grandma has said it. Well, I've got to go out and be the man of the house. And that means take care of. I don't know how I'm going to do it. So that means there's shortcuts. I'm going to sell drugs. I'm going to steal. Whatever it takes, that's what I'm going to do, because I've been labeled the man of this house. I may not know everything, but my picture in my head is that the man takes care of home. Now you having a young man with no means to do that, trying to do that. So we have to change that narrative about what's important. Yeah, mom, guess what? Dad too, we struggling, but I'm not going to put that onus on my young son to do anything. I have to fix that as the parent. I gotta be the parent. I can't ask my child to be the man of the house.
Right.
Go to school, get your education. That's the narrative that we can still control. And we don't let our kids get fixated on, well, there's so much money over here that we can go get, and I can do this and I can do. No, this is the narrative. This is the trail. This is the pathway that I have dictated for you to take. Now you stay on. I'm going to make sure that you stay on it. And I already know that there's temptation beset on each side. I know that, but I'm going to try to keep you on a straight and narrow, and not let you get seduced on to do other things that are not going to be conducive to your growth.
Right. And Gerard 1721, thanks for joining us this evening, as well as Miss Sheila, who's a regular viewer to the show. You were about to say something, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, and I think that, and just to add to that, I think we have to really start to look at how we view education in our community, right? It's not a matter of whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree, a trade, it could be a military, it could be anything post high school, right?
Hey.
We've been debating this thing for over 100 years, going back to W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington.
Booker T, right.
The reality is, both of them were right. We need guys in trades. We need guys who are professionals. We never have enough Black engineers, dentists, doctors, accountants, anything you could think of. We're still behind. So we don't have the room to talk about why we shouldn't pursue education. It's so vital to our communities. And Eric, you talked about the different cities in Macomb. If you look at the educational attainment in each city, you can begin to predict outcomes, the household income, the teenage pregnancy rates, the dropout rates. All of these things are tied to some form of post-secondary education. And it just seems like for us in particular as Black men, we've kind of pushed away from that. And that real connection for me was sports, right? I didn't play college ball, but I played high school ball. And when no one had to tell me to get up in the summer to work out, to be a better football player, or to go to the gym, I did that on my own because I was motivated to be a better athlete. And it wasn't until I stopped playing sports and I actually became a student and I applied that same work ethic, right? I might not be the fastest or the strongest. I may not come from a 2-family household in the classroom, but I'm not going to let those other people outwork me. And that, quite frankly, was when I became a student. It's just applying the same work ethic in. And, you know, as Black men, we're struggling with that right now because we're just struggling in that area.
And Grant, you want to address that question? Can you see the question is up right now, Grant?
Did you brothers advocate for those young men before court judges? I have never had the opportunity to do so. I wouldn't say that I would be opposed to it. I just, you know, I've never had the opportunity to do so. I wouldn't mind standing with a young man to, especially if I got a chance to get to know that person, to speak on their behalf in front of the judge to say, you know, I've had a chance to interact with this young man, blase, and I think after he conveyed this to me that he's ready to go in the right direction. And I think the future can be bright. I would love to have that opportunity, but like I said, it just hasn't been presented.
And I work for a nonprofit youth group, and, you know, the individuals that are part of our group, you know, yes, we talk to them, you know, all the time. And at the end of the day, you cannot save everyone. All you can do is the best that you know how, based on giving them advice. And it's no different than advice your mother, dad gave you, grandfather, whoever the guardian. It's up to you to follow that advice and that guidance. I gotta feel like I know them too. I gotta feel like I'm comfortable in knowing these individuals. I just can't walk in one day, hey, who are you? Introduce myself. We have a conversation, and then I stand before the judge, because the first thing the judge is going to say, well, what's your relationship? How long have you known this individual?
Yeah.
And you got to build a relationship, right? You know, in order to speak on someone, you got to build a relationship. You were about to say something, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, no, I think Grant is absolutely right. It's got to be someone that you know, you've spent some time talking to, you have, offered some sort of mentorship to, and you can speak to that particular relationship. And so I will actually be in court, I think March 21st, for a resident at Children's Village who is going to court, who's up for potentially being tried as an adult as well. I may speak given the opportunity. I may not, but I will be there to support them just based on the relationship that I've developed through interacting with them over the last several months.
And this is a great comment by Tamari Kemet, because I have never been to Ghana. I would like to go to Ghana. I am familiar with the door of no return. Brilliant advice. They should act like leaving Ghana, the door of no return. And that's, I think you spoke on as well, not to this specific topic, Grant, but with regards to being in prison, telling these guys, you know, you spoke on as well, Dr. Scott, you don't want to be back here. One of the things, I've never worked in a prison. I've never been in a prison. I visited people that have been locked up. But at the end of the day, somehow, some way, my advice to someone that's locked up is to learn the word recidivism, because you don't want to be a part of that statistic. Mm-hmm. So there's certain things that you have to self-teach yourself and learn about things. And that's a word that I think everyone that's locked up need to learn, because unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, though, from what I understand. Sometimes they have a better life there than they do on the outside, because you release them back into society, they don't have the resources to be functional. So they say, I'm going to
better life.
You say, Grant?
A perceived better life.
Yeah, perceived better life. You're right.
No way that it can be a better life, but and that therein lies the problem if they perceive that is a better life than walking free.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks for joining us, Dwayla. She's a regular to the Detroit in Black and White platform. And you're right. You're right. Hit the nail on the head, Grant. It is a perceived better life going back. Which how could it be better when you are locked up in a cage most of the time that you're there?
And ironically, when you are a ward of the state in your corrections or whatever you want to call it, incarcerated, the one thing that you will have is discipline, because you are told to do this, when you can do that, how to do this. That's a discipline that, quite frankly, everybody has in their life. Everybody has some sort of discipline. And again, your perspective. When you have a perspective of there's nothing wrong with being disciplined and having a discipline, now how do I apply that to my life? That same discipline to get up every day, to do this, and this every day, that's going to make my life productive. That's as you mentioned, Doctor, the way that you gave everything into sports, you flipped it. I'm going to give everything in this educationally now. That same effort that I gave on the gridiron, I'm going to now give it here. That's what I mean. That same discipline that somebody forced on you while you were incarcerated, it wasn't a bad thing. It's good to have discipline, but you've got to recognize that and walk out of those doors with that same discipline to the rest of your life. That's the thing. Again, I'll use that same term, changing the narrative. Changing the narrative. Oh, I'm just being disciplined while I'm in here, but when I get out, I'm going back to my old ways. No, mentally, you got to get yourself there to understand this discipline works for me.
And it also goes back to choices. I mean, your original statement, Grant, is about choices. I call you, let's go back 40 years. I call you, what you doing? Nothing. Okay, yeah. At that point, when you say nothing, I'm going to say, well, let's do this. That's a choice you make based on what's the next thing that come out of my mouth. So it's discipline, understanding your purpose in life, as well as the choices you make. And that's one of the things that people have to understand.
The two things that we have every day, if you woke up, you get two things. And I listen, I say this to the guys every time I visit. We are granted two things every day if we got up: a chance and a choice. If we got up, we got a chance. Now the choice is yours. What are you going to do with that?
For the rest of the day.
What are you going to do? You have a choice to say, I'm going to sit idle and not do anything, but that's your choice. There's some circumstances that come with that. Or you have a choice to say, I'm going to do something with my life. I'm going to do something constructive, but that's your choice. You get those two things, a chance and a choice. If you get up in the morning, what are you going to do with those two things?
And Kenneth Powell makes a comment, No Child Left Behind. That's a conversation I'll be having next month. Next month is National Reading Month. And probably 2 out of the 3 Mondays in March, I will focus on education. And one of the shows was focused specifically on the mandates that were set by the various presidents and their approach to education, which, it's a major crisis right now. So No Child Left Behind is one of the issues that a lot of people have problems with. So, yeah, that'd be a conversation for I think there are 5 Mondays in March, so at least 2 of the Mondays in March will focus on education, because it's a necessary conversation that needs to be had. Just like I am a proponent of Black History, 365, 24/7. The topic of education should be 365, 24/7.
I could agree with that for sure. You never grow tired. And Doc brought up a great point, because early on, I always felt like college was the only way. And as I grew older and gained a different perspective, everybody is not cut out for college. Everybody's not cut out for it. They're not going to thrive there. And it's okay. I had a closed mind early in my college career that in my college days, thinking that this was the only way. But everybody doesn't fit in college. But there's other places.
Not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
There's other places to learn. Just like Doc said, you can go anywhere and learn a skill, learn a trade that will sustain you and give you an opportunity to raise your family and support your family, be independent of any help from anybody else. So those things, they're available. Learning can take place outside of a learning institution. That's my point.
Any additional comment on that, Dr. Scott?
Well, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, when you look at the outcome of our urban school districts, significant underperformance in math, significant underperformance in science and English. If you don't do something beyond high school, you're kind of stuck in this environment where you're deficient. And while it won't stop you from getting a job, it will put a ceiling on you that,
Yep.
quite frankly, you do it to yourself because you know the challenges you're going to encounter. In certain jobs, every day you're sending out emails, and every email you send out says something about your writing proficiency. And most of us know that. Now, I'll tell a story about reading, a quick one. I was interviewing a group of young men about their academic motivation, and I happen to know that one of them were always into some type of behavioral challenges at school. And so I asked them directly, why do you think you get into so much trouble in school? And he said something that I wasn't prepared for at the time. He said, because I can't read that well. So I act out so the teacher won't call on me. And I was hurt because I knew that young man all his life and didn't know that. But I was also encouraged that he was willing to confide in me and share that information. But for the first time in my life, I understood the connection between academic deficiencies and behaviors. And that may also align with our prison population, who are highly, low functioning in terms of reading. And, so that connection is something that, as a community, we got to do better about.
That's a great point, Dr. Scott. 1 second, Grant, because, in the HR world, I used to do orientation, new hire orientations. And part of the new hire orientation is going over the policies and procedures of the company. Most policies and procedures are 32, maybe as much as a 50-page document. I'm not going to read all of that. So I will call on people to read various portions of the document. I always knew when someone could not read because they'd be like, no, I'm good, but I would never embarrass them. I say, I'll just come back to you. But I would never go back to them. But what I would do, I would ask them during a break, do you have an issue with, reading proficiency? Because even though they were new hires, every legitimate employer has an employee assistance program. So there are resources available for workers in that type of situation. But no, I would never embarrass them. I mean, now with the nonprofit I'm with, I'll be assuming the role of their educational director. But my goal is to ensure that people are reading on grade level. People have a look at what future they want. And I tell people all the time, college is not for everyone. I was a national president for the MU Alumni Association. When I used to give speeches, the schools maybe didn't like it, but I used to tell people, don't go to college because you think that's your next step in life at the high school. You need to be prepared for college because otherwise all you can do is waste your parents' money.
Yep. And
even with me, Dr. Scott, you brought up a great point. I went to a predominantly black college first that was founded in 1867, 3 years removed from the Emancipation Proclamation being signed. One of the things that people have to, 4 years removed, because it was there, 4 years removed. One of the things people have to understand is that one of the highest and greatest levels of black intelligence was that period after the Emancipation Proclamation and the forming of HBCUs and the end of slavery. People fail to realize a lot of people that were going to college about that time, that were being founded by the Freedmen Society, they were not high school graduates. They finally had an opportunity to get an education. That's why they succeeded. They had that quest to learn because it was prohibited from them learning. That was the highest level. I mean, you brought W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. That was the bone of contention between them two. Whereas W.E.B. felt that you had to be elite in order to be successful, the talented 10th. Booker T was like, no, everyone has an opportunity to learn, to be educated. He promoted not just books, he promoted skilled trades, which you brought up previously, Grant. So again, how do we get back? And again, this will be a conversation next month, but how do we get back to our people in the village understanding not just the importance of education, but understanding the power and the knowledge of education?
I think also we have to, and Doc brought up the point about the student not being able to read and recognizing that, and that's huge, that you must have developed some type of rapport for him to trust you with that information, because that doesn't happen. They'll go the rest of their high school or junior high career and nobody will ever know. So that was big that he was able to trust you with that. So when you talk about barriers, we're sticking with high school and junior high now, the barriers, again, this will be a whole nother conversation, but there are so many barriers that keep kids from learning as well. I'll give you a perfect example on the female side. There are girls that may not come to school because they don't have any feminine products. So that's
real. Yeah.
Now all of a sudden that absentee goes up because they just can't afford it. The mom is not in the house, so they're staying home. You have kids that, because they don't have any clean clothes to wear, they're going to stay home. Didn't have a chance to wash. They don't have a washing machine at home. All of those things are barriers from kids getting to school, because you got to get them there first. So we got to break down those barriers to first get them there to the school, whether it's transportation, whether it's, as I mentioned, feminine products. They don't have deodorant. They don't want to come to school smelling musty once they get in there. It may have taken a bath, but if they don't put on deodorant, we already know what's going to happen. They may come out of gym class and all of a sudden no deodorant. So those are barriers that keep kids from going to school. Like I said, the feminine product may not have a good toothbrush or toothpaste one day. Any of those things, they're considered barriers. I say that to say, Terrence Wheeler, the advocate over at Ecorse and River Rouge High School area, doing a great job of doing that. Derek Coleman, my friend, just put washing machines and dryers into a couple of high schools to prevent those problems. He's put in pantries to make sure that kids can come to school and get something to eat. They're not staying home because they're hungry and can't get anything to eat. So they've got pantries now. That's a Derek Coleman initiative that put washing machines and dryers in the schools and pantries where the kids can eat at no charge. Just come get what you want, eat, go back to your seat, whatever the case may be. These are, again, barriers that are being broken down to allow these kids a no excuse, if you will, to not come to school.
And that's a big thing, Grant, because when I was on the board at Delta Prep, which is no longer open, washer and dryer was what they had. Pantry is what we had, as well as not just a food pantry, but a supplies pantry for deodorant, toothbrush, feminine products, and things of that nature. And the same thing over at Inkster Prep, which is a K through 8. There's a washer and dryer. There you have the various sororities. I know the Zetas are very involved with the school. So too are the Alpha Kappa Alpha members at the school. And somebody is asking, what does that sign behind you mean, Dr. Scott? Wake me when I'm free.
Oh, it's a quote from a Tupac song, Wake Me When I'm Free. And of course, I think we all know that Tupac spoke to the injustices that take place in American society. And I think really what he was just trying to say is when the structural inequalities are addressed, then, wake me when we are ultimately, free from that perspective.
And so, Miss Sheila, reading and writing go together. Don't forget. Very true. But what also goes together, Miss Sheila, is hearing and listening. The art of understanding what's being said to you is not just hearing what's being said, but listening. That is what incorporates the need for critical thinking, because if you just hear but don't listen, how can you then respond with a critical thought? So that goes together, reading and writing, but so too does hearing and listening. Let me get some of these comments because we only have a few more minutes left. G Money Hollywood, I partially agree with that, but every student may not be a great advance at math, and that's true. I mean, people have their struggles. You got to meet kids where they're at.
Me.
You got to meet kids where they're at. I think one of the other issues is when it comes to proficiency, there needs to be some type of plan in place in these classrooms where you can not separate, but teach at a pace until everyone is on the same level. Because in a 7th grade class, you might have a 7th grader in that class that is reading at a level of the 1st grade, 2nd grade. And that's what people are missing the point on. You got to find a way to have additional paraprofessionals in that classroom so that everyone is at the same level at the same time. Because the disruption will come from those that are reading at a lower level. I spoke at I spoke at Black History Month last year at Nolan Elementary, K through 8. And I spoke to the 6th through 8th graders. What was interesting as I'm speaking, you had 3 or 4 segments of, and it was just to the black males. You had 3 or 4 segments of boys inside the auditorium. Those that were very attentive, somewhat attentive, those that was there because they had to be there, and then you had those where the teachers just left them to their own because they just, I guess for lack of a better phrase, giving up on that crew because they's like, we don't need their disruption. So they just had them in the back of the library. I was like, wow. So when I asked about that, I told them, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but you have to incorporate everyone into the conversation because letting them be is what they're used to being, left alone. And they will continue to feel isolated and not important. So you just can't have that type of separation because it's noticeable. That was my first time there. I noticed it. So some of their peers notice it. So schools and educators, administrators have to do a better job of involving and engaging everyone.
You guys mentioned something earlier. This is just a question that I derived from the conversation. You had mentioned some guys, if they're not good in math, or if they're not good in reading, but may be very good in the other subjects. Could a child be left behind if they're good in 3 of the subjects, but not good in reading or not good in math? Do they hold them back for that, or do they push them ahead and just hope that they catch up? Anybody know that? I don't have no idea.
They pretty much push them ahead. A lot of the schools have a mandate, like right after COVID. I have a friend, matter of fact, Eastern Michigan grad. I won't say her name because, out her school, but they were being told to pass people based on parents coming up complaining about why you failing my child. Her perspective was your child is not learning. Unfortunately, the principal did not support that teacher. Based on the complaints from the parents, they were forced to. So passing these kids along, you're not doing them any favors. You have kids, they brag and boast about the graduation rate, but that graduation rate is just a number.
Right.
The Chamber of Commerce for the last few years have done a report, and that report has been consistent. 70% of these kids coming out of these urban schools are not prepared to be finishing high school. So you're graduating them and bragging about an 85% graduation rate, 90% graduation rate, but are they prepared to go into society, the next stage of society as an adult? And they're not, because the current 11th graders entered high school where only 5% of, I use Detroit for an example, only 5% of those current 11th graders were proficient in reading. There's no way in hell come the, June of 27, because they're juniors now.
All right.
So 26, 27, they'll be seniors. There's no way in hell that 5% will increase to 100%. I'm willing to bet that 5% that were not proficient entering in 9th grade, it will probably be no more than 15%. So you still have 85% of individuals that will be graduating from DPS that entered 9th grade where only 5% were proficient in reading. So just passing them along, you're not doing them any favor. You're setting them up for failure.
Yeah, that'd
be a conversation next month. 2 of the weeks next month, there'd be a conversation talking about the education and passing them along and all that matter. So let me get your final thoughts, because I'm 4 minutes old. I didn't realize it was 9:34. So let me get both of you all final thoughts. I'll go with you first, Grant.
Well, I think it's a great conversation to start something. I'm sure this is not the first conversation, but as I say, anytime I leave a meeting, okay, what do we do next? And that would be my comment. What do we do next?
Dr. Scott?
Yeah. So, I mean, your last comments, Eric, I think were meaningful in terms of just the reality of our schools. And there is no current way to make up credits. And so what I saw when I worked at a high school, if you failed Algebra 1, you were just put back in Algebra 1 while you were taking Algebra 2 or even geometry. And so unless you take advantage of the summer, which most kids don't want to do. And that's why, and I was one of the
conversation.
And so that's why I spent really my first year of college taking remedial classes, because my test scores were low. I wasn't a good writer. I wasn't really good at math. And so I think for us, we really have to make a commitment. You asked the question, where do we go from here? I think it starts with education, and not just education from the standpoint of you have to go to college, but education from the standpoint of making our young people career ready or college ready, whatever you decide to do as the next step.
And before you go, Eric, I'm going to add to that right there, Doc, because you said it, making them ready for all of the things that you said. But I think sometimes, because remember, these are the kids that are going to be in the future. It could be making sure that policy get wrote or pushed through for people like me and you and everybody. So we also have to, with the trade and all of those things, we also have to give them a conscience to understand politically what is going on around them also. So you
right, great point.
Focused in on my job. There's a great world out there that you are participating in, that you also have some responsibility to make sure it's better than what was when you found it.
And they need to understand, Grant, great point. The future is now. The future is not the future. The future is now.
Right.
So I'm going to thank both of you. Very engaging conversation. Would love to have you both on again. I mean, next month, what I'm doing, 2 of the weeks will be focused on education. You guys have provided, looking at the comments, I still haven't gotten to a lot of comments, but I will forward the recording to both of you. You will be able to go through it and look at the comments that were being said, and we could discuss next month or sometime in the future. So again, love you both. Thank you for coming on this evening. Could not have had a better show tonight without you two. Next month, my show will focus on March 1st. It's the start of Women's History Month. So next week, the 23rd, I have Kate Milligan. She is the founder of an organization called One Girl Revolution. And on March 1st, they will be having an event titled The Power of Her. And they will be honoring women and girls for some of the things that they are doing in the community. And that event will be taking place again on March 1st down at the Detroit Design District, 6540 St. Antoine. But you could come back and join me next week to find out more about that event. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Kate Milligan, looking forward to the event because our youth group, Michigan Urban Youth Alliance, will be participating at the event, and just looking forward to seeing those that will be honored for the work that they're doing to advance the causes of women. They don't have Men's History Month. I don't know why, but we got to roll with the Women's History Month and support them. Again, I want to thank both of you for being on this evening. Appreciate you, Grant, 40-year friendship, 40 years plus friendship, actually. So thanks. And Dr. Scott, looking forward to, again, being on the committee with you up in Pontiac and doing what we need to do to move that city forward. And you will like this, Grant, because the initiative in Pontiac will involve not just education, but the importance of sports playing a role in improving education.
Tying it in.
Yep, tying it in. So again, good evening, both of you. To all the viewers, I cannot thank you enough. Couldn't get to all the comments. Unfortunately, the conversation was so engaging. But next week, again, come join back again with myself and Kate Milligan talking about Women's History Month and their event that will be taking place on March 1st. Good night. Peace and love. Until next time, be good to yourselves and be good to others. Peace.